guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check out today's video. Guys, today we're gonna have a talk about line size, about how line size affects different lures, about how to choose what type of line size you use with different lures, because the line size has a ton to do with your lure's performance and its ability to catch fish or not. If you're not using the right pound test line, you're probably costing yourself fish. So I'm gonna give you guys sort of a good tutorial based upon different type of lure categories. We're gonna talk about the pound test of line that you wanna use with different baits and why that is in today's episode. And also guys, if you're looking to get some line, guys, man, I'd recommend this Seaguar. Guys, I've been using Seaguar line for over 20 years now. It's the best fluorocarbon line I have ever used. They got a good braided line selection too. So I'll put my Seaguar link in the description of this video if you guys are looking to purchase some line. Right now, Tackle Warehouse, guys, we've got a bunch of good still Black Friday sales going on. So if you want to use that link of mine in the description, you guys can get some good deals with that. And also, guys, real quick, anybody interested in checking out one of my Fish of the Moment lake map breakdowns, we have our winter maps up on the site right now. These are maps that I've built myself for fishthemoment.com that are great resources, guys, to learn more about a lake you've never been to before that you're getting ready to go to, or even a lake you fish all the time. It's going to give you some good spots you probably never tried before. So I'll have the link in the description of this video to my lake map breakdowns there. I think you guys would really like them, so appreciate that. Okay, guys, line size and lures, man. This is a pretty broad topic that we're going to talk about because there's a ton of variables that really determine, how heavy a line that you want to use or how light a line. And it's not as simple as what it seems, because when you're talking about the line, you're talking about your ability to, set the hook and not break off, or your ability to be able to fish in a certain type of cover and not break off. Or it can be things like allowing your lure to get down to deeper ranges. So let's talk a little bit about the considerations. First of all, when you're fishing a lure that has a lip on it, like a crankbait or a jerkbait or something like that, the pound test line that's using has everything to do with the depth that bait is going to attain. So obviously, if you're using a crankbait or a jerkbait or some type of bait, that you have to reel that wobbles down like that, the lighter the line, the deeper the bait is going to get. So say, for example, if you're fishing a square bill crankbait or, just a medium diving crankbait on 10-pound test line, that bait may run, say, 4 foot deep on 10-pound test line. But if you put it on 20-pound test line, it may run, a foot or two shallower. So the diameter of the line is going to directly affect how deep that your bait wants, how deep the bait runs. And sometimes you don't want it to run deep. So let's say, for example, we're fishing crankbaits and the water's cold, like the water's 45 or 50 degrees, and we want that bait to get down deeper. In a situation like that, we're going to go to light line because we want that bait to get deeper. But if you fast forward and say we're fishing square bill crankbaits next to lay down logs in 3 foot of water in the middle of the summertime in dirty water, we don't want that bait to get down. We want that bait to stay shallow. So we may be using 20-pound test line. So you have to make a determination on the type of cover that you're fishing and the depth of cover that you're fishing in relationship to the pound test line, just in terms of how deep that bait runs. Now, a lot of it also has to do with your rod angle, because you can change the depth that your bait runs a lot just from if your rod's pointed level or up or down, something like that. So that's a consideration that when you're just talking about making a cast and just reeling normally, the line diameter is going to have a big impact on how deep that bait runs or how shallow the bait runs. Okay, the next thing you have to consider is the type of cover that you're fishing. Because I have found in my own fishing that most of the time you want to try to go to the lighter line if you possibly can, because there's some benefits to that. But a lot of that has to do with the type of cover you're fishing. If you're fishing thick, gnarly cover where you have got to move that fish out of there, that's when you're going to have to go to bigger line. Let's say if you're flipping thick trees or thick bushes or thick grass beds, places that the fish can wrap up around, stuff like that, you have got to have power to get that fish's head out of that cover and away from that cover. And you cannot have light line to do that. It's like you got to use heavy line. So situation where you're fishing heavy cover, you're going to be fishing line tests, over 20-pound tests, maybe 40 or 50-pound braided line, even in situations like that. But if you're fishing open water where the fish aren't going to wrap up around anything, you don't have to do that. You can go with lighter line based upon the needs of that particular lure, because every situation is different in terms of an open water situation with that or a heavy cover situation. So you have to, again, you got one end of the extreme: open water, clear water, light line; stained water, super heavy cover, heavy line. And then other situations are different, you know, cranking a riprap bank, or flipping a jig underneath a boat dock, or throwing a topwater bait on a point, something like that. Everything has got to be consideration of the type of cover that you're fishing. Okay, another consideration with the line size that you're using is your casting distance. Your casting length it's affected unbelievable by your line size. Let's say, for example, we both have a half-ounce crankbait on. And I've got this half-ounce crankbait on a 7-foot spinning rod with 6-pound test line, and you got that half-ounce crankbait on a 7-foot 2-inch medium heavy action bait caster rod with 20-pound line. I'm literally going to be able to cast twice as far as you are. You won't be able to cast half as far as I can, you know, with that lighter line, and that is a big consideration sometimes too, because the longer cast that you make, the deeper your bait is going to be able to get on that presentation. So let's say, for example, again, you're throwing a crankbait. If you throw a crankbait with 20-pound test line, you're not going to get it. You're not going to be able to get it near as deep as I can. Number one, because you got a larger diameter spool of line, and number two, your casting distance is shorter. But with my casting distance being twice as long, I'm going to naturally get that bait down a lot deeper. Casting distance is critical, because let's say, for example, if I make a 30-foot cast with 6-pound test line on a crankbait, and you make a 100-foot cast with 25-pound test line on a crankbait, you're still going to get your bait down deeper with the 25-pound test because you made a longer cast. And longer casts are a lot of times critical in open water situations where the water, you know, is clear, or if the fish are a little bit deeper. So sometimes you need that, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't need to make a long cast. If you're fishing laydown trees and the water visibility is 12 inches and you're throwing a spinnerbait around laydown trees, you may only be making a 15 or 20-foot cast and be able to catch a lot of fish doing that. So it's all relative to that. And finally, the line test is going to directly affect the action of your lure. You're always going to get better action out of a lure with lighter line on there, because there's more flexibility and movement to the line. If you put 25-pound test line on versus 8-pound test line, that 25-pound test is going to be a lot stiffer. So you're not going to get the same type of action out of the bait. So that's a big consideration when you're talking about baits that, you know, have a wobble to them. Heavier line is definitely going to take away some of that wobble. So that's, you know, definitely something you need to think about as well. So as you can tell, there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things to consider when you're choosing your line pound test. And it's not about going to, you know, the lighter line or the heavier line or just one thing. When you're trying to determine the line size that you're using, you have to take all these considerations into thought. It's like, if you're fishing a crankbait down a riprap bank that's really snaggy and there's a lot of sharp rocks on it, you know, you may want to throw lighter line, but you may have to throw a little bit heavier line because of the abrasion that you're going to get from the rocks. So every fishing situation is unique to itself in the challenges it presents to the line size. And it's just a matter of experimentation. You know, if you're catching fish and you're not breaking off, probably got the right line size. But if you're not getting many bites and you don't feel like your bait is getting down deep enough, or you think it's getting too deep or something like that, you might want to consider changing up a little bit. So anyway, guys, hope it helps out. And again, guys, check them out if you're looking. Sorry about that, guys. I knocked the camera off the stand when I reached for the line. But anyway, if you're looking for some really good line, guys, check out the Seaguar line. I'll have the link in the description here. I use the Seaguar in VizX most all the time, and also the Smackdown braid a little bit for my, you know, like my frogs and heavy duty flipping and pitching. So I'll have that link in the description, and talk to you guys later.